when you're a professional engineer, you don't just have a duty to do the right thing. We take an oath. I mean, we take an oath to protect the general public, right? So I am indebted, and the things I do have to pass this test of integrity. So I if something is happening that I just fundamentally disagree with, I need to do anything I can to make the point and to make sure that at least my point is heard. And it may work out that it's okay and we have a workaround, but if because otherwise you're going against that oath, and so then that becomes a bit of a tricky position.
Leading a team can feel like a roller coaster. Big climbs, sudden drops, and moments where you wonder why you got on the ride in the first place. Hi, my name is Matt Heller, founder of Performance Optimist Consulting, and I take great pride in helping leaders and teams stay focused and performing at their best. Through engaging keynotes, hands-on workshops, and practical coaching, I help leaders turn fear into confidence and discomfort into momentum. This means fewer breakdowns and more breakthroughs. If your organization is ready to start building real forward motion, it's time to take action and make better performance and growth your main attraction. Visit performanceoptimist.com/attractionpros for an exclusive offer.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going fantastically today, Josh. How are you?
Great question.
Yes.
Do you like roller coasters?
Hate them.
Okay.
Actually, there was a time in my life when I would have said I hate them. I'm sure you've heard this story many thousands of times.
Go on.
So I was deathly afraid to get on any roller coaster before I was 16 years old. We lived in Ohio, and we would go to Geauga Lake and we go to Cedar Point, and I would play arcade games while my dad and my sister would go on coasters. And then at Busch Gardens in Tampa, I actually was visiting there with my family, and the girl I was seeing at the time, she was visiting Busch Gardens Tampa at the same time, and she said, "Would you wait in line with me for the Scorpion?" Which is no longer there. Sad, sad, sad. But I waited in line with her, wanted to be a good boyfriend. When I got to the front, there was no chicken exit. So I got on the ride and loved it. Absolutely. A white knuckle all the way up. And then as soon as we went down the hill, I was hooked.
Good Schwarzkopf.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but now I love them.
Good. And
yes,
that was a turning point for you, probably.
It certainly was. I pivoted.
You pivoted. Similar for me. I wasn't 16. I was about 12 when I went from hating them to liking them. But I remember being, I would go to Cedar Point, and I have family in Toronto, so I would go to Canada's Wonderland. I would go to Paramount, Canada's Wonderland, and I remember one time I was there when I was 11 and was looking at the Bat and said, "I'm not going to go on that in a million years." And then I remember the next summer I was back at the park, and I was like, well, I feel like it's been about a million years. I guess I'll go on it, right? Because during that time, I shifted from not liking them to liking them. What got you was Scorpion. What got me was Corkscrew at Cedar Point. So
okay,
my first time going upside down. I guess Scorpion was your first time going upside down. So that was like the turning point. I remember I was at Cedar Point that day, kind of like working my way up and like mapping out, like, all right, like Mine Ride and Iron Dragon and just kind of rising in levels of intensity. And then after Corkscrew, built up the courage to ride Raptor after that, which that's a pretty big jump, actually, now that I realize.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Yeah. Anyway, the reason I ask that is because, a lot of people in our industry, really like the thrill rides. And I think a lot of us might have similar stories where we went from not liking them to loving them. Maybe there's this like coming of age, like confidence boost. Like there really is this life transformation piece that happens. Anyway, our guest today, Mike Denninger, had a similar story. Talked about, being on the ride and crying and not liking it, and then eventually hitting that turning point and absolutely loving them. And now he owns his own firm, Denninger Development, where he works with parks, develop attractions.
It was so great to hear his story going from, as you said, crying to designing. When he did not like that ride, he was ready to get off of it. But now he has traveled the world looking at different attractions and designing different attractions, and really takes that oath seriously of wanting to create something that's not only great and entertaining, but also safe. And I think that's so, so important.
Yeah, so we dive into the attraction development side, but we also talk about leadership as well. And he describes himself as an introvert and expands on that substantially on how we need all personality types, including introverts, and really connects that with making your voice heard, in taking time to be able to think, to be able to process, but also tying it in with when you need your voice to be heard. If there is something going on in a project where you really do need to speak up, is really learning kind of to balance that and when to do that.
Well, and where the leadership also comes in is that word you just mentioned, which is projects, So he talks a lot about project management and, working with different personalities and focusing on, getting things done by a certain date. That opening date doesn't move, but your scope might, or the budget might change, and all those factors that go into that. And then all of the people and the personalities that you have to navigate in order to, to hit that mark. It's really fascinating to hear him talk about that.
Yeah. So, should we get to this interview with Mike?
Look, buddy, we should.
Hey, Mike, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. We are so excited to have you on today and learn about all things Denninger Development. How are you?
Hey, Josh, I'm doing great.
Excellent. All right. So let's just jump into this. To get started, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background and your career.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Well, as you guys say in the intro to your show, like, sit upright and hold on. This is, it's been 35 years in the making here. I was born in New York. That's where I was born, and we moved to Central Florida, to Winter Haven, when I was 10. And I think I'll say at the front end of this, because I'll get back to this. While I visited some parks and attractions with my family as a kid, I would not say that I was some theme park enthusiast by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I remember, I specifically remember being on, and I won't name the park or ride, but just being on a ride when I was probably 6 or 7 years old with my dad and brother, and I was not loving it at all. And we got to the station. I was so ready to get off the ride, and then the lap bar wouldn't pop open, and it just sent me into a whole tailspin. And after that, I don't think I got on a roller coaster for like 10 years, I think. I mean, so that was significant, and it's funny that I'm then later in my career, working on rides and roller coasters. So, and so my very first start in the theme park industry was my first job. And that was my junior year in high school. And I got a job in operations at Cypress Gardens. I was working the front gate. So turnstiles and information booth and crowd control, all those various ops tasks. And and then for those, for those that don't know what Cypress Gardens is or was, I should probably say, it opened in 1936, and it was called Florida's original showplace. So, this is before all of the major tourist attractions really came to Central Florida. This was the thing. Before the Disney's, Universals, and SeaWorld. I started working there in 1990. So that was the year after Busch Entertainment acquired the park, along with the SeaWorld parks and one other park. Either of you guys know what the other park was by chance? That's kind of one of those
Busch Gardens, but
no, it was so Busch Entertainment had the Busch Gardens Park, Sesame Place. And they bought the 4 SeaWorlds, right? Because there were 4 at the time. The one in Ohio being the one that doesn't exist anymore. And then the other park was boardwalk and baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Which before that, the name of the park before was boardwalk and baseball.
Was it Circus World?
Yeah, it was Circus World.
Oh,
Yeah. So
fun trivia.
right there off I-4. Yeah, you could put that in the trivia section.
Yeah.
I think, and I like to talk about this job. The job that I did was completely, guest service driven, all about guest service, operational efficiency, which at the time for me, those were really new concepts. Like as a high school student, and I love that job. And that time, like in my life. And like many people in this industry, funny enough, that's where I met my wife. So that's where we met at Cypress Gardens. We had the same orientation class in 1990s, which is pretty crazy. And then, now here we are. So after 4 years at Cypress, I had this great opportunity to transfer to Busch Gardens, Tampa, because it was same company. Because I was going to school, I was going to finish up my mechanical engineering bachelor's degree at USF in Tampa, and it just was luck, I think, that I was able to land a position in the design and engineering department that was a college student focused position. So I was like a drafting technician, and I just worked in the engineering department. And I helped our small project management group there with capital projects for Busch Gardens and for Adventure Island, the water park across the street. And while I was working on my master's degree in mechanical engineering, I was able to get this director of design and engineering role for both Tampa parks. And that job, that's where I learned the fundamentals of theme park project management and development, as well as like the workings of a large corporation. Remember, we were part of Anheuser-Busch. I mean, it's a big company. We were a relatively small part of a big company, but still there were a lot of processes and just approvals and sort of hierarchy that was part of Anheuser-Busch that was in Busch Entertainment. I also got to manage a very small team there. Just in terms of, for those of you, you guys worked in the theme park, but when you do this work in a theme park, it covers every aspect of every discipline. So, we did all of the front end development, design, construction management, opening of every type of project imaginable. This was, gift shops and culinary location renovations and new builds, new rides, water slide attractions, seasonal events, zoological, animal habitats, entertainment venues, operational and maintenance improvements, infrastructure for like large systems. I mean, I was managing something like 50 to 70 projects every year for 8 years. And the nice thing about theme park work, I mean, theme parks are kind of like a small city. And so I learned a lot about facility management in those years. And I learned how to collaborate with people across a variety of different departments at every level in the organization. So I was working with the people at the front line, to their supervisors, to the management, to the vice presidents. I was working with the park president directly, and also the corporate staff that was in St. Louis. And so those years were a lot of work, like a lot of project work, but they really set me up for the rest of my career and how work is done. And then maybe just to cap off my time in Tampa, I did get another degree. I got an MBA while I was in Tampa also, and I also became a licensed professional engineer and a dad, along the way. And I think as I was thinking about history, and I think then my next move was I went to St. Louis to take on the corporate director of rides and engineering for Busch Entertainment. This is for all the parks. I think that was probably one of the most pivotal moments in my career, making that decision to leave Tampa. I was in a park where, I had an established reputation, and it's a great spot to be. I mean, I knew the parks, I knew the people, the teams, the processes. I could get my job done, and I was working on some really cool stuff also. But the opportunity to take on the corporate rides and engineering director was too good to pass up. I was just fortunate on the timing of this, and I became the lead technical person in the company, overseeing ride concept development, ride design, and engineering, all ride contracting, and all the ride vendor relationships, the fabrication and installation of the rides, as well as testing, adjust, commissioning across all of our parks in Florida, California, Texas, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And so this is also the time in my career, because I was in this a higher level role that I started doing more outside of Busch Entertainment. So, this is when I got involved in ASTM F24, on amusement rides and devices. So for safety of amusement rides and devices, I also started doing a lot more with IAAPA, not just attending the trade shows, but getting involved with educational sessions and such, as well as AIMS. And then I started growing my network. This is when I started meeting a lot of people, because I worked on every major attraction that had a ride for Busch Entertainment, and that let me travel all over to our parks as well as around the world to see and experience attractions, to have factory visits and design review meetings at the manufacturer facilities, to speak at safety institutes and and other sessions. Just so many opportunities. And so I stayed on the corporate team as Busch Entertainment turned into SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment. And then, of course, the name changed again here recently to United Parks and Resorts. And I was very fortunate to accept more and more responsibility across the D&E function. I eventually took on the executive leadership role for all capital and attraction development. And I had just an outstanding team of engineers and creatives and project managers. All of us were responsible for the implementation of a significant capital plan across 12 park properties. And I think my own personal development continued in this role as a leader of people, as a member of the executive leadership team, reporting to the CEO, and also in new technical areas as I worked on new park designs and IP development and hotels and resorts and other really interesting opportunities around the world for our brands. And also I just had this unique opportunity to interact on a very regular basis with our company's board of directors. And so I know I've talked a lot about my time at SeaWorld and Busch Gardens, but I really was there for like a career, if you will. And I'm really grateful for that time. It helped me find myself and a place or an industry to work within. And where my contributions would lead to meaningful experiences for our guests. So that sort of brings us to today. So I left United Parks last year after 34 years, since I started taking those tickets at turnstiles. And while it was time for me to close, those many chapters of my career there, I feel like I'm still writing this book, and I feel like now I have, so much more that I can offer to this wonderful industry. I mean, I've learned and believe that we're all better and safer when we're learning from each other. So along with my wife, I started what I call an attraction consultancy. And so having my own consulting company, also gives me an opportunity to contribute more within the greater industry. And I'm also now taking on chair of the North America Safety and Security Committee for IAAPA, as well as joining the IAAPA North American Regional Advisory Board. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
And that's all the time we have, Mike. So
Yeah.
no, I'm just kidding. That was amazing. I mean, I'm just here on the edge of my seat, just listening to that career story, because it does really run the gamut in terms of experiences. And to hear you go from that scared kid on that ride when you were little, to now traveling the world to experience attractions. I mean, what a journey that's been. There's something though that I'd like to, we talked before we started officially recording about little rabbit trails, and there's one little thing that I'd like to kind of follow up on, because I'm not a designer, I'm not an engineer of any sort, but so many people talk about designing rides, designing roller coasters, designing, the next great experience, but you also talked about gift shops and food and beverage outlets and, all those and animal enclosures, all those other things that still absolutely need to be designed and built and fabricated. And I'm just curious, like thinking of it from maybe a mindset standpoint, is there a different approach to designing a roller coaster versus designing a gift shop versus designing a food and beverage outlet, or is it kind of similar, just a different outcome, if that makes sense?
Yeah, man, so I'd say project development, you can put any project through a very systematic project development process. You may spend some more time in certain areas, and certain areas mean different things. For example, if it's a major marketable attraction, you're going to spend an enormous amount of time on front end development, what we call concept development or even blue sky, where it's very creative. You think of a lot of things that you never do, and you sort of chase down ideas and think about what's possible. That may not be as applicable to a retail shop renovation, or putting in those funnel cake fryers that you have to put in, or something like that. But you still have to have an idea, and so then you carry the idea forward, and you go from concept development into design development, and that's when you sort of really start thinking about, okay, this is sort of like the way these pieces fit together. The schematic design, if you will, and you carry that through, keep developing the design, and then you eventually get to your design documents. We would call that construction documents, because that's the things you got to build. So whether whatever it is, you build, and usually you have a process where you work with another company to do the construction. So then you have to find those individuals. Now, if it's a ride, you probably were working with that one ride vendor almost maybe even in the concept development phase, and you carry them through. Sometimes you sort of don't know who you're working with yet, and you have to figure that out. And so you may have to do a bidding process or just a sourcing process to look at capabilities, and maybe even a design competition. Yeah. So that's kind of things that you can do. So that's what I mean. A lot of stuff can, these bigger, I always like to say when I did projects, like small project, big project, a project's a project. I mean, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of management. Sometimes the small ones take more hours per dollar that you're spending than some of these multi-million-dollar projects that take a lot of time, and they may take 3 years, but you have to maybe put a lot of the same effort into both. You may put a little more into the big one, but I think you should, right? So yeah, but I think you're right to think that there's a process here, and everything goes through a process. It's just understanding, how is each segment of it a little bit different.
And then I'm curious, or I've got to imagine that some of these projects might morph together into a singular project. If I think about, Manta, for instance, there's a queue, there's a very intricate design queue that has an animal enclosure in it. It's got the aquarium within it. And then there's the actual ride system, and then come off. And now here's the retail operation. And there's the F&B that surrounds it. Departmentally thinking, are these all separate projects, or is this all together?
Yeah, well, it's all together. There's a lot of design review meetings, especially when you are mixing all those traits that you said, all of those different departments, because you have to make sure you get the flow right. You need your ride capacity to support I'm going to even go a step back. You need the shop size to support the capacity of the ride. You need the queue to be able to feed the ride properly. You want to have that experience to be a good experience as you're walking through the aquarium's kind of nice because it's an active environment. It's a show, if you will, that's always on. So that does work really well. But we work with our job as the project managers, if you will, to sort of piece all those things together and to make it work.
So can you talk us through a little bit more about what you do in your new role with your new business, just in terms of kind of how you serve clients because you talk about, creating attraction solutions, expert consulting, strategic advising, and kind of walking us through what that might look like.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So at a high level, Denninger Development, that's the name of the company, exists to serve others in a technical or strategic capacity. So when I say others, I'm talking park owners and operators, ride suppliers, designers, and other professionals that are in and around our industry. And so I'll take each of those three things that you mentioned, and maybe talk about each one of them. So strategic advising, in my mind, that takes advantage of my many years and iterations of working at an executive level, including numerous interactions with a corporate board of directors, understanding the capital planning and approval process, and having connections with specialty providers as is needed to better execute on those strategic plans. Expert consulting, that covers a range of advisory services. So this is technical, operational, and safety practices within the attractions and themed entertainment industries. So these services are really geared towards professionals and or leaders within and supporting our overall industry. And then attraction solutions, that's probably the broadest category of services that are offered. And in fact, what we've just talked about, that's sort of the makes up what attraction solutions is. This allows me to share my real world industry expertise, overseeing more than 100 major marketable attraction projects in my time, and that includes like 4 new parks and over 40 unique roller coasters, with the ability to assist at a technical and leadership level within all phases of project development, like we just talked about: initial concept ideation through design, fabrication and construction, all the way up through to final execution and grand opening.
Can we go a little bit deeper into maybe kind of the specifics of how you operate a little bit? I'm curious as far as what, the partnership looks like, because there's the different stakeholders at play. There's the park, there's Denninger Development, and then there's the ride or attraction manufacturer. So how does the work get divvied up, and kind of who's overseeing what to kind of create just the one cohesive project that's being developed?
Yeah, Josh. So, the role that my company plays is really, it's that of liaison and advisor, in between. I like to think that I'm trying to help fill gaps in between, or maybe even provide resource for one of those parties that you mentioned, the owner, operator, supplier, design team. Maybe they just don't have the capacity or expertise or time to fulfill a certain role. And I've worked on so many. We talked about the variety of things that I've done. I worked on so many different projects in my career, and they all had their share of learning opportunities. So I've also got to work with a lot of smart people around the world, and so I have this great network of just these, as you guys know, wonderful people. Like, our industry has such great people that I can lean on for help. And I think that collaboration that you asked about, it's really similar to a lot of what I did when I was with United Parks or SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, where I worked with our board of directors on strategy, on understanding, and trying to getting a strategy approved. And then I collaborated with our executive team on the capital plan and putting an actual plan together of what we were going to do. And then I worked with and I oversaw my team of experts on creating and designing and executing attraction projects. And then I provided also expertise within the company for like technical and safety related items that occur in this business. So I've seen all of those different collaborations. I've seen them happen for decades now, and I understand a lot of what each side is really going for and trying to get done so the project can be successful. I mean, that's why we're all working together. So my goal is to assist and help each of those companies, or one of those companies, just move their piece further down and be successful in the ultimate project.
So, Mike, it's great to hear about all the different projects that you've worked on and the years that you've spent in the industry. But also before we started recording, you talked about, leadership and, leading all the people and the projects and things of that nature. So I'm wondering if we can kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about, all the different opportunities you've had to work with different boards of directors and CEOs and like, what is that? And maybe what are some of those leadership lessons that you've learned in terms of how you get your points across and how you lead teams through these complex projects.
Yeah, Matt. It's funny how things happen over time. I think you recognize when you look back, you recognize that you've learned and you've kind of developed, you've personally developed and picked up things and habits. And you have to pay attention to those things to be effective and to be an effective leader, and also just to be a good employee. I've worked with so many great people in my time, and I think so. I've been asked about leading teams, and it's going to sound cheesy, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of my main rules of leadership is just to treat people like you would like to be treated. And I know that sounds so fundamental and simple, but I've found that if you just if there is respect between the whoever the people are, between the leader and the team, or between the executives that are on the team together, when there is respect and when you treat others the way you would like to be treated, I think things happen, and there's a special magic that happens there. I've also learned that, I'll say on the front end, generally speaking, I'm an introvert. I mean, I'm very, very typical engineer in that sense. A lot of coaching along the way, but I think over time you learn that your voice matters, and there are times to speak up and there are times to not speak up. So I think listening is key, especially at the executive level, to listen a whole lot more than speaking. And then because when you do speak, then I think it carries so much more weight to it, and it's also well thought, and you're not just saying things that are on the cuff. So I think that those are probably the main things I would bring up initially.
Yeah. We've had a number of people just over, the time that we've been doing this who have been in an executive leadership role and have described themselves as being introverted, and the way that can, the way that it could hinder their leadership, but also the ways that they could really use that as an advantage. So I'm curious if maybe we can go a little bit deeper into that, or, for someone who might be listening, who considers themselves introverted and then thinks that, leadership might not be for me, or might be very difficult, of ways that someone can lead while still identifying as being introverted.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that because it took a while for me to figure that out on my own. Look, there's all different types of people, of leaders, and it does take all types. It really does. I mean, we do need all of those types to come together to have the best ideas bubble up. And I think it also takes, probably for an introvert, I think it takes a little bit of patience, because you have to recognize that it's okay to not want the spotlight. I think sometimes you feel a pressure that you're supposed to be in the spotlight as a leader, and I would counter that with say what you know. Right. So speak about the things that you know. Stay away from the things you don't. I think if everyone did that, things would be a lot quieter, and it would be a lot more honest and truthful. Right. I'd say just hang on and persevere through, because I know it can be challenging, and I know that you could feel a lot of pressure that leaders are supposed to be a certain way, but I would contend that it takes all types. It really does, and so to recognize that, and recognize that it's okay to just be quiet and to think, because we need those people. We absolutely need those people who are thinking and only speak when they really feel compelled that they should, and not just fill open air with words because they think it shows confidence.
Hmm. Well, and Mike, I'm curious if you have maybe specific advice being an executive leader and also working with other executive leaders that you had to report to, that dreaded term of managing up. When you know that maybe your leader is not seeing eye to eye with you, or there's some difference of thought process, or you're not agreeing with the way that they're going on a specific project. So, what are some of those techniques? And maybe listening and being that quiet person until you have something to say is one of those techniques. But I'm curious, like, advice that you might have for people that are in that situation where they're not as comfortable saying something to their boss that they think their boss isn't going to like or agree
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. I think that's always a challenge. I mean, heck, even if it's not your boss and you're working through something and it's a peer, it could be challenging. Um, what I have found is, there are going to be times when you don't agree. I think ultimately did you get to make your point, the point that you needed to make? Maybe not what you wanted to make, but that you needed to make. And because I think it's okay to do something maybe that you maybe don't agree with exactly, unless there's something critical about going that way. And then the onus is on you as a leader. Your boss needs you to bring that information forward. I mean, as a boss, I would want my people to say, no, we can't do that. This is why. And then you talk. So I think it's more about keeping it to I always like to say the black and white, the facts. If we stick to the facts of the why, and it may be that your thought is not exactly right either, but that then leads to another conversation. But I think there's a whole personal dynamic that happens there, right? And there's different boss types also, like different personality types, and that can make a difference. I've just found it's for me that I think being true and honest, and look, ultimately I think, and I think I learned this going through my engineering education. And here I'll tell you maybe just a little tidbit. When you're a professional engineer, you actually you don't just have a duty to do the right thing. We take an oath. I mean, we take an oath to protect the general public, right? So I am indebted, and the things I do have to pass this test of integrity. So if something is happening that I just fundamentally disagree with, I need to do anything I can to make the point and to make sure that at least my point is heard. And it may work out that it's okay and we have a workaround, but because otherwise you're going against that oath, and so then that becomes a bit of a tricky position.
That's so interesting. And the way you phrase that of taking an oath, we really do put all of our trust into the designers who are creating these experiences that are, bending the laws that we are typically normally doing on a day-to-day basis, on something that is, as intense of a roller coaster, or even just the area, even just the space in general of, walking into a theme park that you are, by buying that ticket and spinning the turnstile, you're putting your trust into the organization, all of those who are involved in really bringing that to life. So I appreciate you phrasing it that way and then connecting it with the importance of making your voice heard. I've got to imagine though, attraction development is probably a pretty aspiring career path to a lot of people. And I think if you asked me when I was in high school, what do I want to do when I grow up? design rides and design theme parks and attraction development. But I've got to imagine that if you pull back the curtain a little bit, maybe there's some less glamorous aspects of it. I'm curious if you can share.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I'm going to pile on for just a second. I mean, yeah, attraction development, that's the stuff that dreams are made of, really. And it's a privilege. It is such a privilege to do this work and being part of the process and teams where you craft and execute on new guest experiences. I mean, it is like nothing else. And it's energizing and inspiring and enjoyable, like many parts of our industry. But as I said this earlier, it is work. Like it still is work, and it could be hard work. Whether or not we want to admit it, in most cases, we're doing that work, that great, inspiring, and energizing work for financial growth. I mean, that is why we're doing it, because we're all in this. We're all here to move our businesses forward, to make money. So, as such, I think attraction development is rife with its share of challenges and heartaches. And so the heartaches, those are usually because we can rarely ever afford or have enough time to do all of the amazing and cool things that we want to do. And sometimes you just have to have thick skin and the ability to pivot, even if you do have a better idea, like a really cool idea that you want to incorporate into some attraction. The challenges, I think the challenges these are going to be pretty ordinary. I mean, I think these are the same things that nearly every project faces. I'm talking about scope, schedule, and budget. So scope, schedule, and budget. Those are realities in the world here, where we're building these great capital projects. And it seems that attraction development, it's always a race, because while many things change, like throughout a project, throughout its development life cycle, like the creative and the design and the scope, those things are always kind of like squishing and changing. And that one thing that rarely changes is the end date. So you work and work and work and work, but that end date doesn't change. And so you gotta hit that date. That is important, and that takes a lot of active management and a lot of hard decisions. And so while managing the financials on a project could really like suck the heart and soul right from the people that are doing the managing, I would also contend that this is really where like creativity and innovation and experience and optimism and fun can really prevail, because that's when some of the really amazing things happen on projects, when you're really faced with, how do I figure this out? And then you come up with some novel solution. And then I'd say like the other much less glamorous and really difficult aspect of this industry is when things don't go right. Like when a ride just continues to fault, or it has technical issues. And, as a project team, we're really hard on ourselves to push and to get things working. But this is really compounded with this added pressure to get the attraction working to meet some announced grand opening date. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, that pressure, that is not for the faint of heart. It is hard. It takes a lot of energy and courage, and perseverance to get through successfully.
So this may sound like a bit of a similar question, but maybe the other side of the coin. Thinking about Josh when he was in high school, and he comes to you and says, "I'm an aspiring attraction designer." What sort of advice or insight do you provide for him?
Oh yeah, first of all, Matt, I got a lot of those questions, and I still do, and I always will make time to talk to high school, college, young professionals. I'm happy to share my story. I think we all have different stories, and there are nuggets to kind of pick up and learn. One of the things I pass on, again, from my own personal experience, is get your foot in the door somewhere. It doesn't have to be the thing that you want to do yet, Look, I mean, I started in operations. I honestly, I look back at my time in operations as so important to my career development and how I became a leader. And knowing what it's like on the front line is, man, that's so, I mean, you guys know because but you guys have done it too. And it's, you understand, you start to understand this thing called guest behavior and how it is to work on a team with other individuals. So that's why, look, the thing that you may be able to do may not be design roller coasters right off the bat. But you might be working on a maintenance team, and man, that's great experience. And so, I find that any experience that you can get in this industry is good experience. And sometimes that takes a little bit of a sacrifice. Like maybe you need to step backward one step so that later you can step forward 3 steps or step sideways. So I think that is important. The other thing I tell a lot of young professionals, a lot of college students too, is that, man, there are so many opportunities now. There are so many. I've seen now with the ASTM F24 committee on amusement rides and devices that there are more and more college students coming to those meetings. They are participating in these meetings. They are meeting the 200 or so people in the world that work on theme park attractions and other aspects of park operations, maintenance, and safety. They have great access and they have a great opportunity to sort of make their reputation known. So I see that. I see the programs like the IAPA Ambassador Program or the Young Professional programs that Ames has, or the TEA has, or the Slice Network provides to connect you with people. So there are a lot of great places to go. I was thinking back, like I think back when we were in college, a lot of those things did not exist. Those opportunities for connection, but I really do. This industry, a lot of it happens based on who you know. That old adage of it's who you know, and I think the benefit in this industry of who you know is that there's the majority of the people that are in this industry are wonderful human beings. They want the best for this industry. We're all sort of like really focused on guest service and delivering a great product. So like we're driven from a guest service mentality, I believe. And so we want to help each other and we want to be there for each other. So I think you'll find that people are willing to help, a lot of them.
Yeah, that is such great advice. Too late for me, obviously, but I know there's a lot of people listening to this that can definitely take a lot from that. Mike, we're starting to run out of time here, but I do have another question for you before we wrap up, and it has to do with Cypress Gardens. And I visited Cypress Gardens, I want to say 2008-ish or so, and then the next time I was there was in early 2011 in hard hat and steel boots, and I was part of the opening of Legoland Florida. So I'm curious, what is something that you miss about Cypress Gardens? And then kind of a part 2 of that question is, what's something that you think Merlin did really well with the property?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, those were good. Those were good years for me. Of course, I met my wife there while I was working. Right, that's pretty cool. And I touched on this a little bit earlier. But I'll repeat it again because I've preached this before. I think it really kind of made me the leader and contributor that I am, because I know without a doubt that my guest service and my like facility safety training and all those frontline interactions that I had directly with guests, they actually made me a better engineer and executive. And I always would talk to our technical people because as you guys worked in parks, you know that sometimes between the operations people and the maintenance technical people, there seems to be this like healthy tension that exists there. Maybe it goes a little too far sometimes. And so, I always found myself, telling the maintenance people like, hey, we need to listen to these operators because these operators, they actually know this ride a whole lot better than some of us do because they listen to it and they see it and they watch it every hour of like every day. So when something's out of place, they're going to pick up on it first. And so I think again, this goes back to what I said earlier about respect, like mutual respect. Like, yes, we all have a job to do here. And I believe without a doubt that goes back to me being an operator. Like, so, because I just sort of, understand that. So that, I don't know that I missed that because I feel like I still have it, with me. And then, so I'd say when I think of Merlin and the fact that they, took on Cypress as their Legoland park in Florida, I think that their decision to invest in that, like I think there was sort of like a savior for Cypress Gardens. I mean, I recognize that Cypress Gardens is not the same Cypress Gardens that was there when I worked there. However, there's still some pieces and components, and I think Winter Haven. I think if they had not done that, Winter Haven probably be in a different spot because they drive a significant amount of tourist revenue, and they continue to invest in that property with hotels and attractions. I'm also glad, I know a lot of facilities are unrecognizable from the Cypress Gardens days. Like some of them are just not there anymore. I mean, remember that park was started in 1936. So it's a long time ago. But the botanical gardens are still there. They remain protected and they're kept up. And I really like that Merlin just brought back the electric boat ride through the botanical garden canals. I mean, I actually worked on that ride platform as an operator back in the 90s. So to see that that's a very iconic ride. So I'm happy that they are continuing to invest in that property.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's been a while since I've been to that property, but I do remember going to it when it was Cypress Gardens before Legoland, and such a different experience. But glad to hear those botanical gardens are still there. Mike, this has been such a fascinating conversation, and it feels like it's just flown right by. So we are kind of getting to the end here, and would love for you to share any contact information that you would want about your company or getting in touch with yourself. Where would you send people?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Also, I have a website, denningerdevelopment.com. And look, you can even email me directly, mike@denningerdevelopment.com.
Awesome. Cool. We will make sure to take that and put that in the show notes so people can access that and get a hold of you and learn more about you. So, Mike, thank you so much for just such a great conversation. This was just so informative and really interesting, and just love getting to learn just about all of it. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And for everyone out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.